G'day mate, 40 here. This is alright, ain't it? We're at the lighthouse here, North Palm Beach, northern Sydney. The thunderstorms have gone. The rain is gone. I can see clearly now. There are no obstacles in my way. Right. What a wonderful time to listen to a little Richard Spencer.
I'm taking care of my kids right now, so I don't have as much time to.
No worries, Richard.
The gay marriage bill, the Defense of Marriage Act, was actually supported by fewer Republicans than it was like a few months ago. And Ben Shapiro has done something where he kind of danced around issues, but he's basically going after the civil rights of like, well, the government doesn't have the authority to force you to serve someone. And this is all related to this Supreme Court case, which is one of these just totally synthetic, complaints that's based on a woman who doesn't want to, in the hypothetical situation, a web designer, she's using speech language code, and she doesn't want to hypothetically be forced to code a gay website or a gay marriage website or something.
Okay, it seems legitimate. Sometimes synthetics are best. It's not like natural legal cases. They're always the best. Sometimes synthetics is the way you want to go.
So it's just this like fraught, case where...
Yeah, why should someone be forced to bake a wedding cake or design a website, celebrating something that you believe to the core of your being is an abomination? So you extend rights for gays at the expense of rights for non-gays.
I don't know, give me a break. And it's not bake the cake, which we did 8 years ago or something. They've done the coding specifically because it's speech. Because at the end of the day, if the Civil Rights Act is operative, then you can make a strong case that baking someone a cake is ultimately no different than serving someone at a restaurant. You can't discriminate in such a situation. But this, again, we're getting into speech. But, it's all just kind of bullshit.
I don't know about you. I prefer freedom of association. So if you don't want to serve someone, you don't serve someone. I allow people to hang out with whoever it is they want to hang out with and bake, only those cakes they believe in.
Yeah, it's all like conservative. It's all conservative, like autism at this point. It's
not conservative autism, right? It is about a fundamental understanding of the self. It comes back to, do you believe that we're basically good and that we just need to give individuals and their forms of sexual expression like more and more freedom? Or do we have more critical understanding of human nature, understand that you have to put barriers in the way of self-destruction, and that traditional ways that usually work out better than newfangled ways of organizing families and communities, right? Why should someone's freedom to practice their religion and build their own life and community be forcefully compromised to be in service of whatever is the new sexual deviance of the moment?
It's like a road to nowhere. It's just they just keep going back to the well, and there's like nothing there, right?
Also, it's all based on, and Ben Shapiro said something to this effect. He actually didn't make logical sense, but he was actually getting at something. Isn't it fascinating that it's all about if you have a holy book, you're allowed to discriminate, but not on the basis of race. So, you can't say, I don't want to serve black people at my restaurant because I don't want to.
Yeah, so conservatives don't make a good case for their own values. Why? Because the playing fields are tilted so that the liberal left controls the playing fields in which conservatives are forced to operate. The liberal left dominates almost all of our institutions. Therefore, conservatives have to argue with one arm tied behind their back. And so they just don't sound as compelling or as rational as people on the liberal left because they're fighting on the enemy's battleground, right? Preserving a right to choose which weddings you celebrate, which cakes you bake, what type of websites you design It should be a fundamental right.
And I don't have any holy justification for that. But you can say, I don't want to serve gay. I don't want to write code for gay marriage websites because of my religion. But you can't, like.
So it's not easy to make a case against gay marriage, all right? Because on the liberal basis of equality, what are you? You against equality, mate? But paying respect for tradition, the way human beings have traditionally organized their communities, their marriages, and their families. Right? We don't know what removing the bulwarks of tradition will do. We don't know how gay marriage will affect men who are traditionally reluctant to get married. Will this make them even more reluctant?
Ostensibly, at least, a secular person doesn't, at least in the way that it's written, he doesn't have the ability to discriminate against gays. Like, you have to be religious. But then, at the same time, also on the...
Well, what we're doing here is we're privileging someone who can make a cogent, rational explication of their point of view over someone who just has an instinct that they don't want to be associated with something. So someone who just revolts against some new modern liberal way of organizing families and community life. Right, they're not necessarily going to have the most cogent, rational sounding argument, but having an internal emotional reaction isn't inherently inferior to simply having a well thought out rational response based in religious text, right? You might just feel uncomfortable with making certain websites or baking certain cakes, and why should the high IQ, right, be privileged over you? Right? Why should those who can make a high IQ case, whatever it is they don't like, why should they have privilege over you?
On this ledger, if your religion can't make you racist, is another assumption. So there's no case in which your religion will tell you to be racist. So that's moot. But your religion...
Maybe there's no such thing as racism. Maybe there's no such thing as this invented, moral horror of discrimination on the basis of race. Right? Maybe people just naturally and healthfully, in many circumstances, simply prefer the company of people like them. And race may be a component of that, along with religion, culture, national origin, etc.
Religion might tell you not to be against gay marriage. Just, as you said, just conservative autism. It's just...
There's nothing autistic about it. Right? Preferring traditional ways of organizing families and preserving the right to turn down work. Right? That's not autistic.
Ridiculous. And it is it is almost like pro-religion, because it's like, if you want to be against gay marriage, you have to thus join these Christians.
Look, it's just easier to make a case against things like gay marriage if you're religious. It's easier to make a case against things like pornography if you're religious. Right? There are a lot of moral stances that are easy to make if you're religious and you can tie it into a religious text.
Christian groups, so that you can cite, chapter and verse from some psalm where he said, Holy Spirit, be before me, two men can't get married together. Amen. It actually gay marriage is mentioned in the Bible.
Right, so if religion's kind of a foreign language to you, then yeah, it seems ridiculous that some people base their lives on the teachings of God, what they believe to be God, as opposed to those who base their lives on the teachings of the New York Times, which is inherently superior.
Go ahead.
I hate these people so much. It actually makes me want to join a gay pride.
Right, there's absolutely no reason to hate people who prefer traditional ways of organizing families and communities.
Especially Shapiro. I mean, the vast majority of his takes are... I'm starting to sound like Eric Stryker, so I'm going to blame some people, but he is so subversive. I mean, obviously, he is very intelligent. He's just...
Ben Shapiro is subversive of what? Right, I mean, apparently he's subversive of Apollonianism. Ooh, what do we have here? Right, so if you're a Christian, right, and you take positions, say, contrary to Judaism or Islam, or contrary to secularism or atheism, you're subversive of those other traditions. Right? If you stand for one thing, right, you're going to be subversive of things that contradict what you stand for. Right? If you love something, you're going to hate that which threatens it.
He's leading stupid, but well-meaning Gentile conservatives down the fucking road to ruin with his.
Oh, this is what he's doing. He's leading Gentile conservatives down the road to ruin. Well, you can't lead people down an intellectual road unless they are already predisposed to go there. Right? You can't trick people into adopting an ideology that is contrary to their nature. Like Nazism and communism, with all their vast propaganda machines, were not changing hearts and minds. They were reinforcing people who already believed like them, but they weren't making any progress with people who believed differently. And so this naive view that, Ben Shapiro is just bewitching, all these Gentile conservatives who are just too stupid to see through his shtick, right? That's ridiculous. We did not evolve to be gullible. We weren't born yesterday. We evolved incredible tools for detecting when other people are trying to manipulate us against our own best interests. That if we didn't have these evolutionary adaptations, we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, you're doing well to listen to him, Richard, because I listened to 5 minutes of him go, and well, it's because the liberals say that blah, 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 and I was going, fuck you, next. All right.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro is not an intellectual feast. All right? He has an audience of people who don't want to think too deeply about politics and cultural issues. And he speaks very rapidly, he takes the most conservative positions possible. He's shallow and glib. And, he's got this upper mid-wit audience who don't want to go deep.
It does almost make the conservatives are just so goofy about what they're saying. I have nothing against LGBT people personally. It's just the text that I believe in tells me that I can't affirm a marriage or something. It's just so.
Okay, the arguments people offer aren't the real arguments, right? People almost never say what they mean. They almost never mean what they say, right? It is normal, natural, even healthy that one would be filled with, feelings of abhorrence at, certain visceral sexual practices that are completely contrary to one's own orientation. I think that's pretty normal.